Hi, everybody. My name's David, and a few years ago I started BKC. You guys might have seen the hives on campus. Um, I was invited by Sarah and Eric, who are the wonderful landscapers here, to place some beehives around. And so this talk will be just about my work with campus, what I do around the city, and the importance of it. I could go on and on and on talking about bees, and I probably will, but I always like to do a little Q&A after because so many people have bee questions. So maybe it'll be answered in this, maybe not, but there'll be time. Hello to everybody on the internet. There's a chat if anybody wants to ask questions on there after too. So basically, I've been keeping bees for about 13, 14 years. My great uncle and my uncle both did it in California and Ohio. And the first time you're around bees, it just sticks in your head. So like I remember it was a swarm hive that my uncle had. So they were a little more wild. And in California, they get a little stronger because of the warm climate. And we were standing out there in the middle of the bees, just like a bee tornado flying around. And it's alarming, but then you calm yourself down and it just feels really good. And then the more you do it, you just cannot stop. And so I wanted to figure out some way to do it professionally, but then also have some sort of impact. Beekeepers now have thousands of hives and they truck them around the country. It's really hard to just make a living doing honey production. And so that's kind of an unfortunate reality of our agricultural system. And when I turned it over in my head a little bit, I realized I could keep beehives in the city, around the city, partnering with schools, other nonprofits, all sorts of different groups, and help them with the honey, help the city with the pollination, and then also do a lot of education and just whatever else might pop up. So that is basically what BKC does. It's a nonprofit. Everything is free. So, you know, if you go to farmers or an elementary school, anybody really, like, they don't have the time and money to spare. And a lot of the farmers I worked with have actually tried bees in the past. And these are people who, you know, raise goats, chickens, pigs, whatever. They've all tried bees and they all failed at it. Bees have a really steep learning curve. It takes years to get comfortable with them and their cycle. And there's a host of new diseases and pests that we're dealing with now. So basically, doing this really helps out them and just the city as a whole. And of course, you know, like bees touch our whole ecosystem. You know, everything from pollinating flowers to becoming bird food. One hive might have 80,000 bees in it. So the 11 hives on campus every year are millions of bees that are touching all the flowers and doing all sorts of great things. And in the same way that bees affect the whole ecosystem, our surroundings obviously affect us, and the bees are helping with that as well. So some of the things we do are installation events. So every spring we take on new sites, we put down new hives in sites we already have, and anybody can come out, put on a bee suit or not put on a bee suit and just watch. And as you've seen, like, you know, the hives are really safe. If you position them in the correct way and keep them really healthy, they're gentle. So, you know, these bees are like right on Rainbow, tons of foot traffic. Right now, there's a huge thing going on down there, and they don't care at all. They're just, you know, doing their thing. And so that's what we like to bring to people. A lot of beginning beekeeping workshops. So people have a lot of questions about where can I put beehives? How do I get started? That sort of thing. And so we're able to come in, help them get started, and then also show them like you can put them just about anywhere. Obviously, tons of school visits, field trips. Those are a lot of fun. Kids in bee suits are awesome. And only rarely get a sting, and it's usually kids that deserve it. So that's also nice. Honeybee rehoming is one thing that we do a lot of. So I don't know how well you can see it, but this is a hive of bees out in front of a Quick Trip. And this year, for the first time, I think because the weather was so good, I started seeing a lot of bees starting to build wax right onto trees, just exposed, which they almost never do. So a swarm is a beehive replicating itself, reproducing. They raise a new queen, a bunch of bees take off with the old queen, they find a new home. And they usually have a little stop on the way. That's where you see them on trees or on people's roofs, wherever. And they stopped here, but they just started building and they would have kept going. So go in, cut them out, and then take them and place them at a site like this or anywhere else in the city. So that way they get a healthy new home and everybody's happy. And this is another thing that I had just recently became aware of, but never thought about was, like there are tons of tree limbs falling, like when you have a dry year and then a wet year, that tends to happen. I took some bees out of a giant oak branch that had fallen down, and they had a terrible beetle infestation in the hive because it had been raining into a crack in that limb. The inside of the tree had just pulped and turned into a perfect substrate for these beetles to lay their larvae in. So the beetles were taking over. It was going to become a beetle hive pretty soon. Those beetles would have used that as a base of operations to expand everywhere. So actually, like doing this and making sure all the hives are healthy just gives a healthier bee and insect population in general. So that was really interesting this year. Another thing, like with the Google rankings being better, like if you Google bees in Kansas City, we come up. And so I get tons of calls about, pests or bees and trees or whatever. So able to talk to folks. And this time of year, I get a lot of calls of people that think they have bees, and it's always yellow jackets. So I'm able to talk to them about yellow jackets, and that's kind of fun. All of our partners get free honey. So that's part of the deal. We put them down, do all the maintenance, all the equipment, and then the folks just get, half or more of the honey. That's at the end of the year. You harvest once a year. And they do a variety of things with it that I'll talk about a little later. Native bee homes. Have you guys seen those? Yeah, so those are really important too. There are hundreds of native bees in Missouri and Kansas, and you really want them to have habitats and a lot of forage. So we try to place those at all of the sites, and that way we can boost all the population. You might have seen, there's been a lot of articles recently about how honeybees are actually crowding out native bees. Not true. Like they can both coexist really well. It's one of those kind of like media narratives where one story comes out, all the other sites pick up on it. It's, very complex. And you certainly can have too much. Like, you could pack an area with hives and it would become too much, but you can boost the entire ecosystem all at once. So building those is a big deal. And then we do honey harvests at all of our sites. And the one here is coming up on, Friday. So everybody should make it. It's Friday just out there. And what we do is take honey right off of the hive, spin it out, jar it up. So you get to see the process start to finish. And tasting honey right out of the hive is like nothing you've ever had. It's so, so good. It also has the effect of, like making community where there maybe wasn't one, or strengthening. There are a lot of the sites that have started doing these honey harvests as community events. So a lot of people come out, and it's just really wonderful to have a harvest. Like it feels very old fashioned to do an agricultural thing once a year in a neighborhood with bees that they've been looking at every day. So for the future, with hoping to grow, one thing we can do is, add more beekeepers, because it's, hard to find people and it's a really unusual job, but with a bit of training, somebody can get comfortable with it. I'm about topped out. I think I could do 150 to 200 hives with everything else that I'm doing. And it sounds like a lot, but again, the pros have thousands. So really, the more you do it, the more you could do a lot of it. If we can add some, then we could start touching all the sides of the city. I've tried to be mindful about putting the hives in various places, not clustering too much, and trying to get north, south, east, west. And additionally, I'd love to start a few apiaries out more in the country, because we could boost honey production and have a ton more to give away, which would be really nice. One of our partners is Q39. I have some hives on their south location. If you walk up to get some barbecue, which if anybody's new to town, Q39, really good. You can head down there. You see the beehives right on the roof as you walk up to the restaurant. And that's a lot of fun because on the right day, they'll just be flying around like crazy, just 10 feet up. But they've been talking about possibly funding just a large site, 30 or more hives, and then producing honey just for them that they could do stuff with and then give a bunch to the group, which could then be given away. So the other thing that I'd really like to get into is just rewilding, doing a bunch of native plantings. Sarah and Eric, who do the landscaping on campus, have done an amazing job. You guys might recognize this is the hill near the daycare, just over that away. And they have planted that whole hillside with natives, and it just smells and looks amazing. And those bees over there are just thriving. Like they're doing so well. And with just a little, time, money, care, you could do that on so many empty spaces all over town. So that would be an area I'd like to grow into. And also with one greenhouse, you could raise so many natives and you could be giving away seedlings, doing workshops around native planting. There's so much potential to that. This tall stack is just an example of what a healthy hive can do. So the bees generally live down there. They do all their business. They raise their young. They store some food for the winter. Every box above that is just honey. And that they could each have about 25, 30 pounds of honey in it. So, a good hive, you could get 100 pounds or more. So with good management, we could be producing tons and tons of honey for everybody. Honeybees have been really easy to monetize on one hand and also build interest on the other. And the natives are a little harder. It's basically, just putting in materials and not seeing much back, but it's a really good thing to do. So with more funding, we could do a lot more of the native stuff as well. Advocacy is huge. You really have to fight for spaces like that. I know Sarah and Eric have, their budgets always, taken away, right? Like chip that a little bit. They can't complain about it, but I can complain about it. And you just have to fight for every bit of green space that you can get. And that just, has a huge effect on everybody. So a few of our partners, this is Mimi's Pantry. So this is a great guy named Dennis, and he has been in real estate for 50 years or so, done really well. And as a way to give back, he started food pantries around the city. This one has 4 acres on it. They're growing their own produce and fruit. And he had me put some beehives there. They're raising honey just to give away at their food pantry. So that's a really awesome thing to be involved in there. And so I, look into Mimi's, really nice volunteering opportunity, but their little space looks better than a lot of grocery stores. Like they just pack it, people sign up, they come by, no questions asked, just do their shopping, and it's all really healthy stuff for them. This is Drum Farm, which is just a little ways on 70. It's also 4 acres. It's a working farm with a foster neighborhood on it. And kids who are in the foster system, if you have siblings, you might just be split up, which, it's heartbreaking. So it is a neighborhood with just freestanding homes, and anybody can apply to be a foster parent. And, once you live there, all the expenses are taken care of, and you take care of kids who, do not get split up and get to live on this 4-acre working farm. And so they have a little farm stand. They sell their stuff every week. And so we can give honey to them. They just sell the jars, make more money for the organization. Another really good thing. And then a little more on the fun side is Union Cemetery here in Midtown is a historical cemetery. It's really worth a visit. It's a really cool place. The graves go back to the late 1700s. And they invited us to put beehives there. They're doing a lot of native planting, great landscaping. And so I thought it would be fun to make the hives look like gravestones. So that is a beehive. And they're just flying in and out all day. We have a corner just for hives, so a bunch of little grave hives. And their honey harvest is coming up early September. That'll be a really fun one. The cemetery also does a lot of October events around Halloween, lots of fun stuff. And so it's another case where the cemetery is just run by a nonprofit board. So they take in what they can, do what they can with what they get. And this is kind of helping them. And it's a beautiful, unique space in the middle of the city. So being able to support that with the bees is really just amazing. And I never would have considered it. They reached out, and that was awesome. And then we've got a few kind of restaurant partners. Tomstown, really good distillery. Also try that out. We have some bees on the roof over there downtown. And that's been a lot of fun. And so one of the more fun things to talk about is just the history of beekeeping. So humans and bees have been interacting for thousands and thousands of years. This is a cave painting from Spain. And so you have a little person up there grabbing the honey, braving the stings. And so it was foraging for the longest time. And then they say, about 5,000 years ago, or, as agriculture was on the rise, we started keeping the bees. So this is Egypt. They keep the bees in clay hives that are longer. And they had amazing practices that I wish we knew all about, because, all we know is what we can decode from what they left behind. But I'll bet they knew so much stuff. And then, we've got 2025. That's on the rooftop downtown. That one's a lot of fun. And so here we've got some important instances of bees in culture. This is a kind of lithograph or whatever from the 1600s. And this is how in medieval times we used to keep bees. So they'd have like a wicker mask, and it would be leather or cloth suit that they would rub with like grease or tallow to, keep the stings away. So they'd be really covered up, and they'd be keeping the bees in these hives called skeps. And the bees would live in there. Once a year, they would kind of scrape the stuff out, or they'd smoke the skep until the bees flew away. And this is kind of neat. This one's actually an allegory for some kind of Catholic Protestant religious thing that was going on at the time. So on the one hand, it's like people stealing from nature. So you have a bird keeper guy, like stealing eggs from up in a tree or something. And there's some deep meaning of, Catholics versus Protestants or whatever, but it's fun to research. In France, they had, in the 400s, there was a king that was really into the bees as a symbol, and they found his grave site. And he had so much gold and just beautiful bee iconography and jewelry and everything. And then that carried forward to Napoleon, who used the honeybee, as a symbol for him in the state. And so if you look close, all of Napoleon's stuff, there's just bees all over it, which is really cool. Here's some more Egypt. I don't know if you noticed on the last picture, it kind of looked like the guy was going into the hive that way. You can do a thing called calling the queen, where you make a noise, the right kind of noise in front of the hive, and the queen is induced to come out. So they might have figured out, just like a duck call or something, they might have been using sound in a way that we haven't figured out yet. So he might have been down there like making a noise into the beehive. And then you've got some Mayans. They were keeping bees down in South America. They have a lot of stingless bees, which has got to be nice. And this is the bee there. And you see, like that kind of picture shows up in the Mayan stuff over and over again. And it's a really unique look. I don't know why they thought to do that, but it's really interesting. And then you guys probably recognize this one. That's the Minecraft bee. It's kind of neat because they got some things right where the bees, if you attack one and it's hurt, all the other bees get mad, which is true to life. Like they release a pheromone when they sting, and all the other bees know, oh, let's get over there and sting this guy. In a Minecraft beehive, there are only 3 bees. There's a little less than 80,000. But, they can't get everything right. Those are some of the hives that we've got. Horizontal hives are nice because they're a little more compact, like a tree. And the bees build out horizontally, which they would normally do in nature. We figured out these ones, which are most used in the 1800s, and those are best for honey production and for shipping. So that's the reason they look like that. easy to build. In the mid-1800s, this guy Langstroth figured out that if you have a space of 3/8 of an inch, a bee will be able to get through but won't build anything there. So he built these boxes and the frames inside the boxes to those perfect measurements. And we still use those over 150 years later, which is just really neat. So it touches back, all the way through history up till now. And that's one really fun part about it. I've been trying to work on building a type of hive that might be closer to a tree. Because when you do beekeeping, you get your hands and your face really in the hive and you feel the warmth and like humidity. And then if you scoop them out of a tree, you feel the difference. And so I think there's some kind of heat and moisture exchange from the tree to them. And obviously the walls are thicker. So there's a lot of really interesting projects that you can kind of pursue when you have the time. And so you've got the honeybee. There are 3 types of bee in the hive. The worker, they're all female. The queen is more like the mother. We call her the queen, but they're all kind of one organism. They don't have a boss per se. So she's the mother, they're all half sisters, and then the drones are the boys. There are just a few drones, and in the fall, they just kick them out to die. Like they're useless. They don't sting, they don't defend, they don't forage for food. They evolve to do one thing and one thing only. And when they do that in the air, they drop dead. So that's all they do. But they are kind of cute. They're like barrel shaped and they have bigger eyes. I'm going to do with you guys what I'd like to do at elementary schools. So you guys can raise your hands. Can anybody name all the body parts? 3. Yeah, good job. How many legs? Easy one. All right, yeah, good. How many stomachs? 2 stomachs. They've got a food stomach and a honey stomach. So they go out, they get the nectar in the honey stomach, they come back to the hive, spit it to each other, put it in the cell that they build with the wax, and then dehydrate it like maple syrup. They take it down about 80%, and then it becomes honey. They cap it over, and it's good forever. We pulled honey out of the pyramids, and it's still good. How many eyes? Somebody's got to guess. Yeah, good. Man, you know a lot. Nobody gets that one. So yeah, 5 eyes. The 3 on top are mostly photosensitive for flying and navigating with the sun. And then the 2 big eyes that have about 7,000 lenses apiece in them. Truly amazing. How many wings? You know all of it. So yeah, they 4 wings. They can beat hundreds of times a second. They will line up in front of their hive and beat their wings to pull air through the hive to dehydrate the nectar or to cool the hive. So they temperature regulate, they force air. Truly amazing. I think that's all of the bee quiz. You've got the pollen sac here, so they go around and they've evolved to just grab all the pollen on their leg. They take it back. One other fun thing they do is ferment the pollen because the pollen has a little husk on it and they can't digest it. So they pack it away in those cells. You can see some pollen right there. And they add some like yeast and enzymes naturally. The pollen ferments and becomes what we call bee bread, and then they can eat it. So they've figured out fermentation, forced air. One amazing thing that the 3 eyes on top of the head allows them to do is just navigate precisely. So there's a really cool thing they do. Have you guys heard of the dance, the bee dance that they do? Yeah, so let's say one bee comes back and has found a really good source of food, right? She'll get really excited and do kind of a circular or a figure 8 dance right there. The other bees will gather around and watch her and smell like the nectar and the pollen. The size of the circle corresponds to the distance, like down to the feet. So small, close to the hive, larger, farther away. The intensity that she's dancing is how good the food source is. And also the buzzing that she gives us tells that. And then there's a line down. The line is the angle of the sun to the hive. So she's communicating the angle of the sun that the other bees will take in and fly exactly. So straight up and down, it's to the sun. 15 degrees off, it's 15 degrees away, like from the sun. Sun changes position all day. They're communicating this in the dark. And if that's not enough, when they're in a swarm like they were in that one picture, that's a temporary spot they've never been in before. They alight there. They do the same thing when they're looking for homes. So they'll send out little bee real estate agents. They'll find trees with holes in them, people's roofs. They could be miles away. They will fly back, communicate where this new place is, how good of a home it is. Those bees will figure out where it is, get second opinions, and then decide amongst themselves which one sounds best in a place they've never been. So it's just remarkable. Like the complexity of their communication is like astounding, and we're still unlocking some of it. And so that the dance is one of my favorite things, but I think my number one favorite is they do this thing called washboarding. And I need to get a video of it to put in this, but basically they will just walk back and forth in a straight line, just in a tiny little line. And there could be hundreds of them doing it. They'll be outside the hive and they'll just be like walking back and forth. And we still haven't discovered why they do that. So like all the science that we have, we can do MRIs on their brain while they're working. The brain the size of a poppy seed. We've trained them to go through mazes, all of that stuff. We don't know why they do the washboarding. And so for all we know, they could be dancing. Like literally they could be. So they're just amazing. And then obviously there's tons of health benefits. Everything's a superfood. Raw honey has so many compounds in it. It's good for just about everything. It's an amazing salve. It's good for cuts, burns. If you get stung, you can put honey on it and it actually soothes the burn or the sting. Propolis is one most people have never heard of, but it's amazing for you. If you can find it, get it online. The interesting thing about royal jelly is that in order to harvest something that they feed their young, you have to induce them. You can suspend it in alcohol, but it'll make you live forever. It's so good. So like the workers. And then you go in with a tiny spoon, scoop out the water, about hand the royal jelly out. So in order, if you look at royal jelly, it's like $100 for a tiny jar because each one has just been scraped out, and it's apparently really good for you. I don't know, I've never tried it. It seems gross. A lot of cultures actually eat the larva too. Really good protein source. So especially Africa and Asia. I'm not aware of them doing this in Europe. They must have though. But early on, they weren't just taking the honey, they were also gathering the protein from the larva. And that's actually what bears are going after when they go at the hives. And so here you've got a bunch of science stuff. I'm not the best at that, but they've figured out so many different things that all of the hive products and even bee venom can do. It's a really hard thing to study. So a lot of the time it just gets dismissed as, kind of hippie or alternative, whatever, but it's very serious. One of the difficulties is that, the bees will be different in every environment. You have to control for what they're eating, what kind of plants are around, the type of bee. So all these things are very, very hard to study. And as a result, I think the medicinal properties haven't been developed as much as other laboratory synthetics can. Bee venom is incredible. So anti-inflammatory, people use it for MS, Parkinson's. There's a lady who's doing research up in New Hampshire, I think, who has figured out that it might be able to cure Lyme disease. But again, yeah, really hard to study, but they're unbelievable. And I think the green space benefits are pretty obvious, especially particular to the university and the hospital. it helps with the mental health and especially recovery times. And so, I mean, as we found, like with the landscaping on campus, it's really hard to have enough money put into it, but the benefits are there and they're vast. Like with the Hive products, it's harder to study, but it's pretty much undeniable. You guys probably already know also that, third spaces are declining. And so everything is just homes and businesses. And so that's something that I hope we can do as an organization is pushing that. One of our partners is an orchard up in Pendleton Heights run by that community. And they just took an empty lot that was, ugly in a part of town that could be pretty disregarded. And they took over it, worked with the city, planted a fruit orchard. So a bunch of fruit trees, native plantings, we put some beehives there. And so we have community events throughout the year. And they have, we have non-bee ones and bee ones. And it's just really great. Like it's a beautiful thing on a site that wouldn't have been used for anything at all. And so that's a real inspiration. And I feel like every neighborhood, every city block could have that. And how much better would everybody feel if they could just walk through something like that? Like, I mean, there are some really, really beautiful parts of campus that you can enjoy like that too. And so here we get to the less fun stuff. Has anybody heard of migratory pollinating? Most people haven't. And it's interesting, but 80% of the beehives that are kept in the United States are used for pollination via highway. So basically, if you have miles and miles of almonds in California, they've wrecked their entire local ecosystem. There are no pollinators around. They pay beekeepers to truck out their hives, set them down for 2 weeks while everything's flowering. The bees pollinate, they go back in the hive, they go up and down the coast doing that, and everywhere. So I was talking to a apple orchard person in Missouri, and he pays a South Dakota beekeeper 40 grand a year to pull the beehives down, pollinate his apples for a couple weeks, and then go away. And that's the case like across the country. And it's wild that nobody's heard of it. It should be way bigger. That's also helped with the spreads of pest and disease, and also the weakening of the genetics because they're just breeding bees like crazy. And for them, it's really not too difficult for an experienced keeper to split one hive into 3 or 4. So they'll do that. They won't care as much if one dies. Obviously, they don't want any losses, but they plan for that. And so, it's really a bad system like most of our agriculture. But let's say you're a third generation beekeeper, it's been a family business. You can't just make a living on honey anymore. You are forced into this. You truck your bees around, you make the money renting. The honey's a byproduct that you can sell in bulk. And that's how that goes. Back to the stories on honeybees crowding out natives. That is one thing that the stories always mention is that the number of hives is increasing. And then they kind of stop there. The number of hives is increasing in the US, honey flatlined, and most of the hives are being trucked around. So that's not exactly a healthy sign, right? And the natives are also declining. I mean, it's bad. This is the biggest bummer, and then more fun stuff after that. But we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction event in Earth's history. That's it's just a fact. It's easier to pay a lot of attention to like polar bears and things, but the bugs are it's very, very bad. I had to look up what caddisflies are, but that's it's like a water fly type of bug, and it's a bioindicator. So basically, they are around water sources. They are used for researchers to tell the quality of the water source. So if they're declining, one, it means the water's bad. Two, it means you don't have a very good way of seeing exactly how bad it is. And that's, it's the case for a lot of these. And so bees are up there. And it's the kind of thing where, we just need to really do some drastic work to fix this. Even stuff like, our green technology that's coming in is really good. Solar panels are really good. The wind is good. But also, if you're doing a solar array or a bunch of turbines, you clear cut the land. like just plant, some grass or whatever, if you plant anything. So you've devastated this, few square miles. So, that kind of stuff, we need it, but it also has to be planned around. And so that's an area that, were we to grow and have enough funding, we could work in as well. Like advocacy, especially in the cities, is a big deal. And so here are some of our native bees, and they're really wonderful to see around. So many of them, you would think they were flies. Like, pay close attention to the flowers on campus if you're ever walking by. When they're really blooming and putting the nectar out, you will just see so many different little insects all over them. And it's really great. And you can build all of these native homes, put as many of them as you want in the garden. They're all solitary, so that means they don't live in a colony like the honeybees. So they just lay their eggs and then go about their day. The eggs come out, new bees. That's it. This is a butterfly box. So butterflies and moths can go in there, lay their eggs. And so it's a really fun project to build, great with kids or anybody really. You got to do a little research. I always like to mention bumblebee homes because it's just so cute. But a bumblebee home, they like a little burrow underground and they find a way into it. And they actually do build little cells out of wax that are more like bowls. They put pollen and nectar in there, but that's all they gather. So each little bowl will have an egg and some pollen and nectar, and they'll have a bunch of them there. And then, they'll just do their thing. And you can build bumblebee homes and put them all over too. And those are just really fun. It's, seeing bumblebees around is great. So one thing everybody can do is the native bee homes, planting a lot of natives. The natives will only go up to about 1,000 feet. Honeybees will go miles, but up to 1,000 feet. So they need the homes, they need the plants around. That's really important. If anybody's more interested in it, there's a really good organization called the Xerces Society, XERCES, and that is just a really good international nonprofit devoted to boosting insect populations. So they've got a lot of good materials. So basically, what we're here to do is talk about the fundraiser that's going on now, which is really wonderful, that Alexis has put together along with some others, and it's a really awesome thing. And so basically, with a little funding, we'll be able to grow and do more of what we've already done, and more things like the natives and some rewilding. One fun thing somebody was talking to me about recently was seed bombing. If anybody's heard of that, where you just, any empty lot, whatever, you just gather up your wildflower seeds, toss them in, and then let them bloom. So there's so much that we can do with a little bit of growth. And, everything we've done so far has been, free for everybody, totally self-funded. And the only way I've taken an income is with selling the excess honey on the side. So most weekends I'm at the city market, which is a nice place to check out. Really good Saturday, Sunday market, lots of good stuff. And so I'll sell a little honey there, and that's how things roll. But hopefully, we can add a few positions and really start to grow it and make a big difference all over the city. And that's that. I always want to do the Q&As because so many people have so many bee questions. So if anybody has any questions at all about bees, honey, whatever, I think I should probably check the chat too, but if anybody has a question. Yeah.
So thank you for mentioning obviously, but we with regards to the fundraiser to talk about operation on first today. So we spread the word, but we're also looking for about 3 to 5 ambassadors that will have their own personal donation links. I know a lot of you are referred to as leadership positions. It really is kind of a leadership role that you can take in, and you can raise money for our pollination and support our campus beehives and raise all the funds that we need in order to keep that going. So if anyone's interested, please let me know, and I can just write down your names and emails so that we're going to get involved in campus leadership. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And yeah, if anybody's interested, there's tons of opportunities to get involved. The Instagram is at BKCMO, and I put out all the information about the honey harvest and various activities that we're doing. And we do have on Friday, the campus honey harvest is going to be awesome. Like every year, it's been more and more people, so everybody can take home a little bit of honey. And I usually bring the bee suits. We check out the hives if anybody wants to stick around. So it's a lot of fun. And all the other ones around town are great too. So it's a good time of year to become aware of everything. And for any of the ambassadors too, there's tons of free honey. And I think whoever raises the most, we've got some free tickets to Q39 is doing a honey dinner where their chef just takes a bunch of our honey and then does like a 4 or 5 course meal, everything using the honey. And that's going to be really fun. So we've got a couple of those coming up. Another good thing to keep an eye out for. But yeah, that's it.
So for everybody who doesn't know me, my name is Sarah Norris. I am the Community Gardens Program Manager with the Landscape Department. So when we talk about Sarah and Eric, I'm Sarah Park. So all the vegetable gardens this year on campus are my world, and then I do community outreach and education. So if you want any opportunities to hang out with David and Bees, just contact me or contact him, and we can definitely make that happen. I put some flyers over on the channel about the honey harvest event. This is our 3rd annual honey harvest. Really cool. It's gonna be out in the courtyard. 11 o'clock, last about an hour or so. You'll have a chance to come in, see how honey is harvested, and you can take a little sample of your honey home. And like I said, it is some of the best honey you'll have ever tasted. We're also doing a raffle fundraiser. So there will be some purchase a raffle ticket. We'll have a bunch of different prizes available. You can purchase large honey, and we have some vanilla pasty with the honey. We've got a book, we have t-shirts, we have a beekeeper kit, we've got a lot of really cool stuff. So if you have an opportunity, come out and see the honey harvest. And yeah. Also, I'm gonna put over there, I have some maps of the Botanic Gardens here on campus. So most students tend to hang out just here in the HEB area, but campus is 70 acres wide and there are lots of gardens on campus. In addition to the beehives, we have fish.
Sorry about the delay on food, everybody. There was some crazy stuff this morning. Yes. But it's all back here. Please grab what you want. There's something there.
But before you go for lunch, we have some announcements. We have a question on Zoom that I can ask you. First of all, I'm Dr. Bhattacharya. It's nice to see some familiar faces and to meet some new faces. I'm one of the faculty advisors for Earth, so it's great to have you here for our first inaugural meeting of the year, which is great. We have some folks online. So Pete's Garden, Joe from Pete's Garden had a question. He's online. He was asking how can bees, well, first I wanted to say the Kansas City Public Library does help the public make seed bombs.
Nice.
Native seeds. So it's a resource. I didn't know that. So that's.
Yeah, I wasn't aware either.
Yeah. And then he wanted to know how can bees be used to support reintroducing native ecosystems in urban and peri-urban landscapes.
That's a really good question with some technical terms in there, so I'll do my best. But yeah, so any type of bee is good for introducing a flower, obviously. So like they'll be pollinating. You could plant a bunch of natives in an area. If you've got no bugs around to pollinate, it's not going to do as well. And having pollinators around, whether it's natives or honeybees, is just like a super boost to those plants. So every site that I've put bees on, the farmers or the people around have just noticed a marked difference in the plant health, the productivity, and then also in just the bird activity. So many more different types of birds have been coming around to all the various sites. So that's been really wonderful. So, you just view it as an important part of the whole ecosystem you're trying to create. I would also say too that one thing to be aware of is just next time you're walking through the city, consider each city block. How many plants are there? What kind of pollinators do you think live in that 1,000-foot range or square mile? And in a lot of areas, it's not a lot. I can tell you the hives that we have downtown over here on the rooftop, they are doing terribly. There's just nothing downtown for them to eat. And so, they're flying down, looking for food, flying back up, burning a lot of carbs. and there's just not a lot of anything. So they're a really good barometer for how an area is, another good indicator. There are some spots of town where I didn't think they do very well, and they're thriving, and that's really good. And then, yeah, spots like downtown, that's not so good. So hopefully I answered a little bit.
Yes.
How do you keep them alive in the wintertime?
Yeah, it's getting tougher and tougher. So bees over the winter will cluster up and they will try to maintain their temperature they like in the 80s or 90s. The queen will be in the middle and they'll be just in a little, football size ball. The outer ones and the inner ones will be vibrating to create heat. And then they just do little rotation shifts. And so the outer ones will go to the inside when they get too cold and vice versa. For us, it means a lot of work in the fall in terms of pest control, making sure that there aren't any diseases. A lot of the pests we have now, week in the hive, diseases comes in. Honeybees do a thing in the fall and late summer when there's not a lot of food on the trees or flowers called robbing. If a hive gets weak, bees within a few miles will be able to know about it. They'll go in there, grab as much food as they can and take off. That hive dies. But if that hive has a disease and that's why they're weak, the bees go in there, bring the disease back to their hive, and so on. You've got cascading effect, so you create a little pandemic. So a lot of the bigger keepers are unfortunately using, hard chemicals and acids to control the pests. The USDA just fast-tracked the first insect vaccine, which, is honestly kind of scary. Like, I'm not an anti-vax guy or anything, but like vaccinating any livestock has tons of consequences, and we don't know enough about them, their stomachs, so creating a vaccine for insects, who knows what's going to happen there. So basically you just try to get them really healthy in the fall, make sure they have a lot of food. We always leave a lot of honey on the hives. And that's one of the beautiful things about beekeeping is, unlike any other livestock, you are like symbiotic with them. You're trying to keep them healthy. You want them to have plenty of food. You're not using them once they're dead. You don't want them to die. You're just trying to keep them healthy and happy. You're encouraging excess and then taking the excess. So you just try to keep them very healthy.
How long do they live?
Your average honeybee, the worker, lives about 5 weeks, but the fall bees have to live till spring. So they'll extend their life, tenfold or whatever. Not nowhere near tenfold, 4 months. The queen has years, so she can have 2 or 3 good egg laying years. So just like a hen. So it's amazing that you've got this one little insect. They're all the same creature basically, and one will live for years. One might live for a few weeks. They'll live for a few months, but they'll function as one big organism. But I think what I always think about is, I think like with any animal, they have a lot more interiority than we ever thought. So, I mean, there are some researchers who think that bees dream, and they will, they groom each other. They have kind of like playful flights that they do. So they're, you think of them as a superorganism. People are used to thinking of insects as just pure instinct or just dumb, like little dumb machines or something, but it's not that at all.
Is it harmful at all to smoke the bees?
You can over smoke them. The smoke is kind of neat. So you have a smoker, you blow that just a little bit across the hive and inside when you're going to check them. And it has the effect of calming them down. They communicate with pheromones. So if they're only smelling smoke, they can't send out an alert. And the smoke makes them go into the hive and eat honey. So the theory is that, for millions of years, if they smelled smoke, it was a forest fire. There was nothing else it could be. So they would have to go in and eat as much as they could in case of emergency. So that's the effect that the smoke has. Traditionally, beekeepers might even add like dried orange peel or various things to the smoke, as the theory was that it would have some benefit on the bees. And then it got dismissed for a while. And now we're finding out that like essential oils and various things can actually have a good effect on their whole system. Like there's a tracheal mite that essential oils can kind of stop, which is really interesting. That they figured that out hundreds of years ago. Now we're kind of refiguring it out. But yeah, smoke generally not bad for them.
this might be a question more for Sarah. Several months ago, we had an email correspondence about Bees KC, and it was proposed launching a Launch KU campaign or a sponsorship through each department, or even through like health systems and KUMC. Did anything come of that, or is that like something to pursue?
The Launch KU is what the fundraiser is.
That's what that is?
Yeah,
Okay.
that starts today and it goes till September 12th.
Okay, cool.
And all of that money will go directly towards helping the beehives here on campus.
And we're gonna have more communication and stuff going on about that soon. But same thing with the honey harvest event that's coming up on Friday. That's gonna be also fundraising for the Launch KU event. We have our donation links that just got uploaded today. And then any of the project ambassador sort of things that we talked about earlier, those are where you get your own kind of donation link. And you can like use that link and we can track how much you specifically like were able to donate, and then that's those prizes that they were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to add that reminds me is, on the bummer slide, last year was the worst year for bee death in recorded U.S. history. So they've been talking about colony collapse disorder for decades now. We just had the worst year. A lot of beekeepers lost up to like 90% of their hives. A lot of people went out of business. We lost a ton around town. So this the fundraiser is helping like replenish like the bee supply basically.
I know a lot of you are having to head out at 1, so grab some food on your way out, but if you have time, stick around and chat too.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to also, if you want to stick around, I brought a little jar of the best honey I've ever had. So it came out of a tree that got cut down in Waldo, but it's really amazing. So we'll be tasting that. Grab some honey sticks. Oh, I brought a hive with me also. Yeah, so check them out before you go too.
Here's our website.
Hello, ladies.
Which is on the QR code that you get from Alexis. But I wanted to ask you if you could, there's